As y'all know, we recently been making videos on the 3DS as well as the PlayStation Vita. In this video, we're gonna go ahead and compare which one is the best bang for your buck and which one you should get in 2023. Both of these consoles are awesome, especially when modded. The 3DS could do so many things as well as the PlayStation Vita. So we're gonna go ahead and compare and see what is the ultimate handheld in 2023. Starting with the PlayStation Vita, of course, we got PKGJ, which is an application that actually allows you to pretty much download any game from any region, language, doesn't matter. You can go ahead and install it straight to your console. As you see, there's filters, so if you want to look up for specific DLCs or specific regions, you could do it from this menu and simply click on whatever game you're trying to download and install game. The 3DS has this ability as well. As long as you have Homebrew, you can go ahead and install CIA backup files and upload the 3DS games to your system, and boom, you have a bunch of awesome 3DS games to play on your console. There's so many great 3DS games, so this is an awesome ability. Next is the backwards compatibility factor, and when it comes to the PlayStation Vita, this thing is a machine. There's a mod called Adrenaline, which when you load into this, it turns your PlayStation Vita essentially into a PSP, and you can go ahead and use your home menu like if it was a PSP, which is pretty awesome, especially if you grew up with a PSP. And with this ability, you can go ahead and upload any PSP backup file to your memory stick and enjoy any PSP game from the whole library. And again, like I mentioned, there's a ton of PSP games that are enjoyable and definitely worth playing, so this is an awesome ability. And you won't have any issues playing these PSP games on the PlayStation Vita. They have no stuttering, no audio issues. These things run flawlessly, so it's a great way to play your PSP games. And also with this PSP ability, you're able to upload any backups of your PS1 games to the system, and you can go ahead and play any PS1 game that you want. As you see, I have a ton of great titles like Silent Hill, Crash Bandicoot, Resident Evils, etc. I'm gonna go ahead and show some gameplay of Crash Bandicoot. And again, with the PS1 games, there's no stuttering, no audio issues. And the cool ability about the PlayStation Vita is actually allows you to use the analog stick on a lot of these PS1 games, which is pretty awesome. Now, when it comes to the backwards compatibility on the 3DS, this thing can do it all as well. As you see, there's a ton of Game Boy Advance games using the virtual console that you can go ahead and upload any, backup file of these Game Boy Advance games and put it right to your 3DS system, and all these run flawlessly. Then there's a mod kind of like Adrenaline on the PlayStation Vita, but on the 3DS it's called a Twilight Menu Plus, and it basically turns your 3DS into a DS, and it's a bunch of little files. It's basically like a media file area where you have a bunch of different files. You can go and upload your backup files here. You can do Nintendo games, NES, Super Nintendo if you have a new 3DS XL. So there's a lot of abilities with this. As you see, I have a ton of DS games because we all know there's a ton of DS games to play, so I have to have them on my system. And all the DS games are native because the 3DS is backwards compatible with DS games, so you won't have any issues, of course. And like I mentioned, you can go and upload all your backup files for your Nintendo games. And I'm personally not the biggest original Nintendo fan, but having the ability to go back and play all these old IPs is just a sweet ability to have on the system. And yeah, it's just cool to play some of these old school games. And also, like I mentioned earlier, we can't play the Game Boy Advance games, but you can also play original Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, and all these run perfectly on the 3DS as well. And the 3DS does have its own homebrew launcher, and there's a handful of cool things you can do on this. There's some ports. There's obviously FBI, which allows you to download CIA files. There's updaters, there's forwarders, there's theme managers, etc. There's not too many ports, unfortunately, but it's still a cool homebrew launcher to have on the 3DS. And when it comes to the Homebrew Browser on the Vita, it's way more advanced. As you see, we have the Vita DB, which is the homebrew launcher, and there's a ton of downloads. The thing is about the PlayStation Vita, the community is way more active, so people are constantly uploading a bunch of different homebrews, a bunch of different custom games, manually created games that people are out here making specifically for the Vita. So it's cool to have all these little mini games as well as some ports from other systems on the PlayStation Vita. And the Homebrew Browser, like I stated, is just a little more advanced than the 3DS. And the thing that the Vita can do that the 3DS can't is the 3DS can't really play PlayStation games, but the PlayStation Vita can play some Nintendo games. There's a Game Boy Advance emulator, there's an N64 emulator, there's a Super Nintendo emulator, as well as there's even a Dreamcast emulator, which doesn't really work that good as of today, but it's definitely a work in progress, and it's definitely getting there. As you see, going through this Nintendo 64 menu, I have these games specifically backed up on my PlayStation Vita, and there's a bunch of good games. All these run pretty much good. As you see on the bottom right, there is a little indicator that says playable, unplayable, or there's some in-game issues. There's actually a list of a website. If I remember to pop it up on the screen, you can go ahead and look it up there, and there's the list of what N64 games are playable on the PlayStation Vita. And when it comes to Game Boy Advance games, they all run perfectly on the Vita. There's really no issues. Game Boy Advance is one of the easiest systems to emulate, so on the PlayStation Vita, there's really no issues. You can go ahead and enjoy any Game Boy Advance game you like. And again, just like the Game Boy Advance, Super Nintendo is really easy to emulate, one of the easiest systems to emulate for, so the Vita, it can work it flawlessly. flawlessly. You can pretty much play any Super Nintendo game that you want. As long as you have a backup and upload to your Vita, boom, you're ready to go. But another cool thing the Vita could do that I don't even think the 3DS is powerful enough to do is have a bunch of these awesome ports. As you see, we have Max Payne, the GTAs like GTA 3, San Andreas, etc. We even have Bully, the Anniversary Edition on the Vita, and these are sweet. Like I said, I don't even think the 3DS is powerful enough to have these on the system. So the Vita, that these things are working flawlessly, no issues. As you see, I'm showing gameplay of some Max Payne. There's no stuttering, no audio issues. This is a fully playable game. I'm gonna go ahead and show you some San Andreas as well. As you see, it loads up flawlessly, loads you right into the game, and boom, you're in Los Santos on the PlayStation Vita. This is one of my favorite parts about the PlayStation Vita because a lot of these ports are PS2 games, so it feels like you have a PS2 in your pocket, like an advanced PS2 in your pocket. So it's just a sweet feeling that the 3DS doesn't have. As you see from the video, the 3DS and the PlayStation Vita are both phenomenal consoles, even in 2023, and they're more than usable. Both of these handhelds have a ton of abilities, but I have to give it to the PlayStation Vita if we're talking about the ultimate handheld in 2023. The 3DS, you can pretty much enjoy any Nintendo that you want, old school, new school, doesn't matter. You could enjoy it all on this one handheld. And yes, there is a handful of mods and cool things you can do on the 3DS, but it's nothing close to the PlayStation Vita. The PlayStation Vita, you can play Vita, PSP, PS1, as well as even Nintendo emulators. But when it comes to Homebrew, the PlayStation Vita takes it by a mile. The community for Homebrew on the PlayStation Vita is still very, very active even today, and there's going to be a ton of new ports and mods added to the PlayStation Vita as time goes on. That community is active on the 3DS, but not close to as active as the PlayStation Vita, so this thing will only continue to grow and become more and more awesome. And even today, there's way more ports. As you saw, the Max Payne, the GTAs, there's just a ton of ports on this system that the 3DS, I don't even think has the ability to do. But let me know in the comments, which one are you choosing, the 3DS or the PlayStation Vita? Like I said, I have to go with the PlayStation Vita, but both of these are still awesome consoles, and I really can't blame you for picking either one. But yeah, that was today's video. Hopefully y'all enjoyed. I have some new content coming soon, so make sure y'all stay tuned. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. I'll see y'all next time.